Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to another edition of Dilly Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan.
What's going on? I'm Carl. John, you are hilarious, bro.
Today is a very special episode because we are going to give you our favorite things in 2025. It has been quite the year, and we thought, as a show that is interested in context and clarity and doing deep analysis, that we do an episode where we did little to none of that. And instead, we just told you things we liked, why we liked them, and didn't explain ourselves like everyone else on the internet. So I'm really excited to get started today and tell you about the things that inspired us, the people we were following, the deals we thought were really distinct, the platforms we think are worth paying attention to, and some of the things we think may materialize in 2026. So we organized this episode across 5 different categories. We'll start with creators. These are people who are building audiences and ecosystems collaboratively. We will then move into deals. So these are transactions that took place that had meaningful impact on ecosystems. We'll then take a left and go toward analysts. These are people who are high signal, low noise. They deal in clarity and not conspiracy. And then we will spin the block and have a very interesting conversation about platforms. So these are gatherings that are moving people towards something. They could be shows, they could be people, but they've sort of materialized beyond the existing format. And then we'll get into some of our predictions. So we're excited about this one. It's going to be more rapid fire than usual, but we hope that you find something you like, that there is something that sparks your attention. These are people we essentially are interested in and pay attention to. So we hope that this blesses your algorithm. Maybe you can unfollow some of the slop that inevitably entered your feed and replace it with something. And yeah, we'll get to it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today because you know me, I'm chronically online. So for me to be able to kind of sit down today and share some of the things that I like with the audience, with our folks who tap in, that's gonna be really dope. And I think it's gonna kind of create a lot of room for us to have some like really dope discussions when we all start meeting in person in 2026, so on and so forth. So I'm excited about it. Who's some of your favorite creators, John?
Well, I use Instagram on web, so I guess I should start with that, which is not relevant to this conversation, but I just thought I'd say that.
Yeah, I mean, John does not like a lot of people, and so hearing him like anybody is kind of hilarious.
I don't think that's true. I'm just not easily impressed. And I think the internet's a place where people go to be impressive instead of impressing things upon people. So I have a few favorites. One is a woman in London named Gina Bang. She goes by Just Geen, Gen. She is a fitness trainer and PT. And more than that, she started this movement around creating environments where people can experience fitness, not from a place of shame, but from a place of joy. So she built this entire ecosystem called Beats and Bands, where people show up and essentially listen to Amapiano, Afro beats, dance hall, and do workouts. So it's like a fitness party that people pay to go to, and it's blown up over the past few years. And I think wellness just generally is one of those spaces where to differentiate yourself, it's not enough to be fit and be shredded. You have to have something that people are attracted to, and that can be personality, that can be product, that can be perspective. But what I think Gina has done is create sort of a personality, which she obviously came in with, but then she's created an onboarding for people to actually take their health seriously without having to be shamed into doing it. And so because of her personality, she's also super, super funny. I think there's like an ease that she communicates with, and it's helped her grow that audience. She just did an event actually in New York with Red Bull where she did the same kind of concept, but she had a live band. So she had a saxophonist, she had a drummer, And it was crazy because if you think about those two things kind of merging together, you don't typically see sort of a live performance element with fitness, at least in group fitness classes. Typically the music's already pre-recorded. Like, it's a very different kind of feel. And so I'm really, really, really interested in people who are able to blend things that people typically don't do and create new offerings for a community. And she's selling these things out. So I think what she's building is really powerful. I think if you're a brand, if you're trying to do integrations next year, that's something to pay attention to because people follow her. People like what she does. They care about what she says. And so she's kind of transformed from simply like exclusively fitness or only that to sort of a trendsetter and sort of I'd say a vanguard in that space. So I paid close attention to that. And yet again, I'm not the target audience, but I'm still like, that's fire. Someone else that I've been really, really curious about and impressed by is a creator that I kind of like knew when I was on Twitter a little heavier, but just watching her kind of grow and expand has been pretty profound to me. Donye Taylor. So Donye Taylor, I'd say, is a creative savant. She's someone who I think displays the messy middle of what it is to kind of build a creative life and to navigate those ebbs and flows. She's got a pretty substantial community on Substack. She's pretty well known on Instagram and then also the site formerly known as Twitter. But what she's figured out, I think, is how to galvanize people to take their intellectual curiosity as a practice and not as simply a performance. And just watching her explain her process and kind of merge those lanes, create products like Nucleus, which was this brain she built that people actually purchased and was sort of a impetus for their creativity. Talking to other people about how they engage their life. She did the creative directing for Smino's album. So just sort of like, I think, embodying what we know and love Tiana Taylor for. Like actually being able to move through those spaces with dignity, with class, with freedom, and then open sourcing that knowledge, writing to people about it, doing workshops, telling people to lean into their hobbies for the sake of their hobbies, not to just monetize them. And then also having a stellar commercial career and sort of breaking that idea of the career ladder and sort of having a portfolio I'm always impressed by, and to do it and to make a living from it, I think is always something to be celebrated. And then, finally, this is a new addition. There's a guy named Chris Pfizer. He goes under Chris Kinda Reads, and he's this man who fell in love with reading. I don't know how else to say it. He basically decided he wanted to read more. And so he started reading and then essentially tweeting about reading. And he started to go viral. I think he was on TikTok, and he just loves books. And these aren't just everyday books. He loves like classic literature. So he started going viral reading Dostoevsky, Of Mice and Men. One of his tweets was like, yo, my Jane Austen collection is getting OD big. Like, he's just out here reading classic English literature. And if you know anything about book publishing, publishers make more money off of reprints than they do new books. So it's kind of hard in book publishing to actually get someone to look at old work and then get people excited about it. So he's actually moving units because he loves reading and people love watching him learn about classic literature. And I don't know, it's not every day you see someone go online and give you a 2-minute summary about Pride and Prejudice with locks down to their shoulders. Like, that's not your everyday experience. And so I think there's the message and there's the messenger. And so I've been personally enjoying watching him discover books I grew up reading, but separately, it's reminded me that like reading's a technology, just like anything else. And so when you fall in love with a new technology, you get excited and then you subsequently want to evangelize it. And so it's just cool to see somebody actively doing it for the love and people responding and being excited. And he only comes online after he's done reading. So, because you can't be online and read. Like you have to actually just go read and then tell people what you read. So he can't be everywhere because he's busy reading. And so now people are asking like how he makes so much time to read. And he's like, I wake up early and read. There is no secret. Like I read books. And so I think that is really, really interesting to me because that's not a traditional way that people have codified building audience. Like there's all these hacks. And this is someone who was just like, I started talking about the books I was discovering because I found them really, really interesting. And people found me because I was talking about books. So those are my creators.
That's dope. I think that's really interesting seeing a person become really, really well known online for what's arguably an offline activity, right? Today, usually it's like what I do online is the thing that kind of grows the audience because you're either providing a solution online or you're providing some form of entertainment online. But he's only just like reporting back, which I really like.
Yeah,
that's fire. Yeah, I'll get into my creator list. So I got a bunch of folks in here, so please bear with me. I'd like to start my list off with Jaeki Cho, who's one of the founders over at Righteous Eats. Pure New Yorker, bro is from Queens, and he's an ex hip hop journalist who kind of found himself in the middle of doing food content. But the reason why I love what he does so much is because he's not just saying, hey, you should eat here, and he's like picking which food it is to eat, but instead he's like going really in depth about the owners of the restaurant, the history of the food. Like he goes into the economics of the food.
Yo, in Japan, obsession is the culture. Taste down to the millimeter. From a train arriving at 12:06 to a bowl of ramen perfected for decades. That same obsession, you'll feel it this Sunday, September 21st at Kuma Cantina in Nakano, Tokyo. Daniel, Pakistani Mexican American from SoCal, started a pop-up during the pandemic. Now with Chef Guillermo from Durango, Mexico, who was trained in Japanese kitchens and CDMX, they built Kuma Cantina, a Mexican restaurant rooted in tradition, executed with Tokyo discipline. This Sunday, we're hosting a one-day brunch. First, Burrito Chingon, inspired by my favorite NYC taco truck, chorizo, chicken, poblano rice, chipotle spread for that slow burn, then a repeatable banger, homemade tortillas using Japanese flour, beef shank sliced like cecina, marinated with kimchi and onions, grilled over open fire till charred, a taco where CDMX meets Seoul meets Tokyo, and Kuma's menu goes beyond, birria gyoza, shrimp and crab enchilada with tobiko, volcan de lomo tostada. So if you're in Tokyo, this Sunday, September 21st, 11 to 4, pull up to Kuma Cantina and Nakano. Let's eat, connect, hope to see y'all there. Aight, peace and blessings.
Right? He goes deep into what the culture is, where the food like really comes from, and like why these types of dishes are the way they are. And he also allows like the owners of these restaurants to actually speak direct to camera to a lot of folks. And I think what makes him really exciting is because you don't really find a lot of creators online that also move and use their creativity as advocacy, but he does, right? Like he'll use his post to say, hey, this is a place you should go to eat just because this place is closing, or hey, this person is they fell on hard times, their food is great, but they can't keep their restaurant as open. From there to advocating for better policy for restaurant owners.
My big idea for New York is a Singaporean hawker center inspired food stalls that are in every major transportation hub throughout the 5 boroughs. Street vending is a hotly contested topic in New York. There's never been a concentrated city agency that's dedicated to the development and oversight of street vendors in New York. And a lot of street vendors that currently have these carts that you see, they're actually renting the licenses in underground gray markets from people that have been grandfathered in for decades. The Singaporean hawkers are essentially food halls that are in every major transportation hub throughout Singapore. Because these food stalls are not expensive to maintain, the actual vendors could focus on the food and the service, not survival. What if there is a food hall or a hawker center, like let's say a Jamaican lady who wants to just start her own jerk chicken stand, but the barrier of entry of opening a restaurant is so high? What if there is a stall that she could do so with a much lower barrier of entry, and she could do it within her own community so that she could serve somewhere where she actually lives?
My name is Jaeki Cho, and I'm the founder of Righteous Eats.
Right? And I think the other thing that I love about Jaeki and what he does at Righteous Eats is that he's not afraid to challenge his audience, right? Most creators kind of stay within their niche, and they're kind of afraid to kind of break out and have conversations with their audience that would make them uncomfortable, but Jaeki will. Earlier this year, we co-wrote a post where basically we talked about why people are excited about voting for Zohran Mamdani. And it's not, because it's the wave or because it's cool, but it's because like many New Yorkers themselves felt like achieving the American dream wasn't a possible thing and that they were voting for something new. But at the same time, he, as a person who works with restaurant owners regularly, understands the fundamental tenets of capitalism and how challenging balancing both economic ideas could be, right? So I really love that he does that, and he's a very transparent creator, and he's, this year he spent a lot of time traveling, so he's also taking the work that he does overseas. He gives me this like Anthony Bourdain kind of feel with the work that he does. So Jaeki definitely is one of the creators to watch for me. Interestingly enough, since we were just talking about Zohran, Mamdani, and Osse collectively as one unit are on my top creators of the year list, just because they, to me, are what I'd like to call creator politicians, which is something that's like entirely new, at least. Osse kind of broke that fourth wall as a politician, which we never really had before that. We just had these like very old school political commercials.
Why is it so hard to get between New York's two only connected boroughs? There's no reliable transit route that doesn't involve several bus transfers or several hours in a car. There's a plan to build a train line to fix that. It's called the Interborough Express. The route would use old existing train tracks to create a new commuter line that would take just 40 minutes end to end. The plan was announced 3 years ago. If this were Japan or Europe, it would be done by now, but we're stuck in the planning phase, which could take forever. We know that because we were supposed to have a Second Avenue subway years ago, but the phase, officially called pre-planning, took 15 years. So why does it take so long to build new lines, even when tracks are already laid? I'm New York City Council member Osse, and welcome back to my new series, Why Shit Not Working? Well, we already know that our system is designed to delay. It would take forever to explain why this process takes forever. The system has countless opportunities for people to slow it down. For example, local politicians like me have too much power to veto and not enough power to build. Community boards are a couple dozen unelected people who cover zones of 200,000 residents, and they're allowed to veto and delay projects constantly. And the environmental review process was born decades ago to predict and avoid environmental harm. But today, it's often abused by bad faith actors to kill projects they don't like. Community input is necessary, and so is protecting the environment. But when we delay a rapid transit route between Brooklyn and Queens, or across Harlem and down the east side, for millions of people, it's clear the process designed to protect us is hurting us instead. We've created these systems to prevent bad things from happening, but they've gotten so bloated, they prevent anything from happening. It's past time to start cutting miles of red tape and start building again! When you realize we pumped an extra couple million tons of carbon while waiting for the green light to build green infrastructure, you start to see why shit not working.
But Chi, actually, who's the son of Combat Jack, he decided, hey, you know what? Like, I'm going to speak directly to the audience. And he kind of broke that wall. And not only did he do that, but also he found a way to really explain policy and its effect in a real way. I love that. And I think Zohran saw that in his messaging, picked that up for his campaign. But Zohran went and just like innovated on top of that, where not only did he do that, and kind of recreated that model, but then on top of that, like, he figured out how to run a campaign on low spend. He only raised $8 million in matching funds from New Yorkers, completely community driven campaign. And then on top of that, I don't know if y'all remember, but when like the mayoral election came, bro was doing skits. He was doing proper skits. He did the Bachelor's skit, New York, will you take this, Rose?
You deserve better. You deserve to be able to raise your family here, to be safe, to travel where you need to, free of costs and worry. You deserve someone who works as hard as you do, who thinks about you every second of the day. That's the kind of mayor I promise to be. New York, will you accept this rose?
Paid for by Zohran for NYC.
Like, he was wildin', and I love the fact that he did that, just because we kind of needed a new way as consumers to kind of consume politics. So I love that. When I think about other creators that I really enjoyed this year, I think this year was like the year of the card game. So I brought some card games with me. So this is Gent Gems by Miles Maps. It's a company run by my boy Gavin Bennett. And in short, like, what this is words of affirmation for boys, which I really like. I think growing boys really need words of affirmations, whether it's a card collection that you as a father want to share with your son, or you as a mom want to share with your son, or if you're a teacher and you have young boys in your class who are going through troubled times or just need direction. I think that this is like a really good card collection to have for them. Like, I'll read like literally the title card. The title card here says, "Dear Brown Boy, these flashcards were created with one person in mind, you," right? And I think having cards specifically for them, especially in this point in time where things are rapidly changing and we're in a world where, you know, it looks like, you know, young boys are being left behind, right? It's really good to kind of have, you know, some affirmation cards for these young men. Another card game, or well, another affirmation set that I really love is the CEO deck by Ask Alicia and Yeti Says. And basically, in short, these are entrepreneur cards. These are creative entrepreneur cards. They're affirmation cards for creatives who are entrepreneurs. And effectively, what I use these cards on a regular basis for is to kind of just like push me through. Especially like, you know, if we're working on something, you and I, John, and I'm just getting like hella frustrated. Usually I like to grab like one of these cards and like read them to kind of remind me where I need to be. Like, let's say if I get really upset at someone, I'll pick up one of these cards. Like, I just picked up one and it says, "Be human, never underestimate the impact of a smile, kind words, or a helping hand. These seemingly small gestures can brighten someone's day," right? Just like a really cool small pick-me-up that a lot of founders can use, just because in general, like, a lot of founders go through a lot of shit, you know? And as a result of that, what ends up happening is these folks don't really have much other folks to talk to, just because they're kind of in this space by themselves. The last card game I'll go through is StereotypeShit NYC, which is made by Osse Cards. This is a fucking New York ass game. This is a New York game. So just in short, what this game does is you get a type shit card, you get a stereotype card, and what you do is you play them against each other. So basically, and I'll go through it because I got a fresh pack. So what happens here is you pick a stereotype card, which is just a stereotype that you'll find in New York, and then you'll pair that card, that stereotype card, with a type shit card. And that card will either power up or power down that stereotype that you picked. And like, I play this at home with friends. I have like 3 of these. I play this at home with friends, and like the drama gets crazy. Like, we got the Harlem Hotep stereotype in here. We got the Brooklyn YN stereotype in here. We got the, Upper West Side Sugar Daddy stereotype in there. The Soho Trust Fund girl, the Washington Heights BBL baddie in there. and the reason why I love the game is because it points out the absurdities of the stereotypes that we have for each other. Because a lot of times we actually don't live up to the stereotypes that people label on us. But the reason why we don't is because they're absolutely absurd. So seeing that in a game and being able to actually laugh at it, at just how stupid and absurd it is, I find that really fun. So those are the card games that I really love. In terms of moments this year, I think about Beyoncé as a creator and what she did with Cowboy Carter. Starting the end of last year with her performance, Beyoncé has been really, really strategic about every move she's done with Cowboy Carter this year. And obviously, Beyoncé is strategic basically about everything. But nonetheless, the set design, the way she structured her album, the way she did her rollout, the way she engaged her audience, Blue Ivy, Wavy, the entire year. You know what I'm saying? Like, I loved every moment of it, and I'm not gonna front. It made me feel way more American. It's actually part of the reason why I got my little American flag tie, my little ode to Cowboy Carter this year. And yeah, so shout out to Beyonce for that. And I would say that my last creator is our engineer, our producer, Wolf Taylor. Wolf Taylor runs a podcast called Halfway Up. Really dope podcast for Black men to sit down and listen to, watch. It challenges you to ask yourselves real questions that you don't necessarily ask yourself, but also Wolf gives you the language to actually talk to your boys, not only about the things that they're doing right, but also the things about that they're doing wrong, right? I learned a shit ton from Wolf's pod. And also Wolf really, towards the end of this year, really started switching up his content game. He's been really doing this like day in the life, kind of like, this is what it's like to be me in New York City. And like sharing those stories, sharing stories about him visiting his family. And the way he's doing it, I find, is really, really dope. It's, most folks see folks who aren't necessarily from New York come to New York and they label them as gentrifiers and they box them in. But like, Wolf gives a lot of context behind that not every person who comes from somewhere else is just a rich person who has the money to pay higher rent. Instead, it's like, I'm just a real person who's in New York City trying to find opportunity, Mm-hmm. So those are my folks. Those are my creators. Shout out to all of y'all. Keep killing it. Keep doing your thing. And I know next year, 2026 is going to be a big one for y'all.
Yeah, Wolf's him, bro. All right, cool. On to deals. So the way we structured deals were transactions that we thought had outsized impact, not just for the people involved, but for the ecosystem, and also things that may have flown under the radar or just not been widely talked about, but had deep implications. So my and our two, they're very far apart. One is the work of Harbourview Equity Partners. Harbourview Equity Partners is an equity fund run by a woman named Sharice Clark. They invest in music catalogs and what they would call transcendent assets. So this is the sort of work of generational talent or musicians who have had outsized success with their bodies of work, and those bodies of work are uncorrelated from the traditional market. Uncorrelated simply means that if something happens in the political arena or the financial markets, music catalogs remain by and large unaffected by that volatility. So for investors, they present very, very interesting returns because people are going to continue to listen to music regardless of what's going on. So it is a permanent asset, which is why when people tell you that art doesn't matter, you should ask them the last thing they listened to. Because they either lied to you or they were just sitting in silence like a nut job. And even if they were sitting in silence, they probably played music after the silence ended. Great. I'm glad we got that out the way. Okay. So Harbourview is very interesting because even if you don't care about anything that has to do with private equity, they see the work of artists as evergreen intellectual property. So the creative assets will continue to generate value. This year, they have had a hand in doing deals with T-Pain, Kelly Clarkson, Slipknot. I'm going to pause for a second. If you're into rock music, Slipknot is one of the most successful rock groups of the last 25 years whose fans do not outgrow them. They grow with them. So to do a deal with a group of people who have a catalog that rich, that have charted that many times, means that you have to know something and then you have to be trusted by those artists. So to be moving with that kind of rigor in the public market and then also be engaging in the private markets is pretty remarkable. That'd be one thing, right? It's a whole different thing to trademark the phrase content is queen. So I'm just going to leave that alone because I'm not a lawyer, but that's nuts. Okay, great. If you were going to think about a thesis to bet your career on, culture's a good one, but to then financialize it is something distinct. So for me, the kinds of deals, the kinds of artists, the way that they're actually putting valuations on things we intangibly know can't go overstated. And so when we talk about culture and we talk about what it means and how powerful it is, sometimes I think we get funny style around the math. The team at Harbourview is not funny style about anything. So the math continues to math. The liquidity is there. The value for artists is there. They did an incredible deal with Hit Boy, who was in a terrible contract for almost the entirety of his career, which he's talked about on record. And after he got out of that, Harbourview showed up and did a different deal with him that actually provided liquidity and then allowed them to have a long-term relationship. And these are the kind of things we talk about as if they're never going to happen, but Harbourview's doing some of those deals in public, and that's just, to me, is really, really powerful and something that I think is worth paying attention to, and then also learning the mechanics of how those things get done and watching the value that gets placed on these things that we say are simply intangible, but investors are putting into. KKR does not give $500 million to people on a whim. They definitely don't do that twice on a whim. So if you're interested in seeing the catalogs they own, they actually have a Spotify playlist of the catalogs that they own. So you could just go into Spotify and type in Harbourview and you'll see the kind of actual artists that they're engaged with and the catalogs they've taken part in. So
that's actually really smart. They're monetizing themselves.
Well, they're also just like, they understand that I think to be in this conversation, you need to be personable. They also led the round for a children's animation company. They also did a strategic deal with Issa Rae and Color Creative. So they're not, and I think they're actually producing a few different biopics. I think the Queen Latifah that's coming out soon, and a few other ones. And so they have a flywheel around entertainment and music. and cultural stewardship because they're invested that way. And so it makes sense to think about introducing this asset class, but also making sure that the artists are taken care of who have produced these things and sort of given their life to their craft. And I think that that's just a distinct value proposition. So that's the first one. The second one is a little different, and it's there's some it's I won't call it complicated, but there are some very distinct parts of this. So I'm going to try to delicately talk about this the best way I can. In the advertising and media industry, as we've talked about a little bit this past season, awards are really important. They help showcase who did something well. They help create value for the work other people are doing. They create aspirational goals. If you were going to award a country with the most prolific brand building of the last 5 to 7 years, you would be hard pressed to find a country more deserving of that award than Rwanda. Rwanda has been the named sponsor of 3 different international winning football, also known in America as soccer teams. This may not be a big deal, but if you understand the history of Rwanda, you would understand how transformative it is to have your public framing be about visiting a place that has had a complete reinvention of its story and narrative in public. Cool. Earlier this year, Rwanda became the preeminent logo sponsor of the Clippers. They became the coffee sponsor of the Intuit Dome, and they also became a name sponsor of the LA Rams. That would be enough, but they didn't stop there. They are also, because of where the Intuit Dome is located, a leading sponsor for one of the largest housing complex and land developments in the Western United States, which happens to be in Inglewood. So, to review, they are the lead sponsor of an NBA team, an NFL team, a leading stadium, and one of the largest actual construction projects in the Western United States. This is also important because what happens next year? Thanks for asking. The World Cup. What happens in 2028? The Olympics. Where do both those things take place? LA. So that means that the country of Rwanda beat other places to creating an actual pipeline for people to experience a country they might not have known by simply being visible inside of some of the highest quality monocultural events, starting with an upcoming NBA season, leading into an NFL season, walking into the World Cup, and then engaging in the Olympics. That's what you would call strategic foresight. And I have seen, by and large, no one talk about it. But if this was an agency, they would have won every award possible. Small nation, big dreams.
That's wild as hell. Wow. I didn't even know they were cooking like that, bro.
It's different. People got to pay attention out here, man.
Well, I don't know if I could compete, but so I have 3 deals on my top deals list. Spotify, the Spotify WhoSampled deal, which literally just snuck in because that deal just closed probably like a month ago, maybe less than a month ago. So everybody arguably knows what Spotify is, but maybe less people know what WhoSampled is. So WhoSampled is a website that basically helps you find who sampled X song in your favorite song. That site has been like a core site for musicians for many, many years. You hear a song, you're like, yo, is this what the producer made, or where did they find this, right? So WhoSampled was helping folks kind of figure out who that was for a long time, and now Spotify copped them. And the purchase price obviously was undisclosed. It was an undisclosed amount, but once they bought them, Spotify released a new product called Song DNA, which basically is a product that as you listen to a song, they will actually offer you where the song was sampled. And I believe that that's going to completely change the game for music. And the reason why is because, well, obviously, one, we'll be able to better find, you know, where the samples of these songs come from, right? But second, sampling music is a very difficult process. And part of the reason why it's so difficult is because you have to get that sample cleared. But the thing is, if you find a song, but you can't find the artist, or you can't find who owns the rights to that song, it becomes really, really difficult for you to get a sample cleared for a song that you've created, right? And I think Spotify is going to help not only centralize that process through this new feature called Song DNA, this new product, but also it'll make it much, much easier for independent musicians to not only find samples, but also to use them and contact who has the publishing rights or who has the recording rights, so on and so forth, so that they can actually use those samples. I think it's going to make being an independent musician a lot easier to be. Now, of course, there's the other side. And the other side is being led by producer Nicholas Craven, who doesn't believe in sample snitching, because finding a sample is supposed to be this exercise in purity, right? The way you usually found a sample was by crate digging. You had to go to a place, you had to play tons of music for you to find something. You had to be able to reference X, Y, Z song. You had to have a lot of knowledge of the music to begin with in order for you to identify a sample, then also contact the, you know, owner of that, of the music, right? And I think that what, you know, they're upset because that process will get expedited and it'll take the discovery process of music away. But I don't know. I hold that against the rights of kind of the artists who, as you mentioned with the Harbourview deal, a lot of them are looking to, you know, make money off of their work, right? They're looking to increase the value of their work, right? So that a company like Harbourview can kind of step in and say, hey, look, I'm seeing a lot of folks are sampling your work, or you're starting to get a lot of interpolations. You're starting to get a lot of plays. Like we see your catalog is worth something way more than it was worth before. And part of that process could be because of Song DNA, right? So that's a deal that I'm really excited about. And I think will really start to shape the industry. Another deal is Tiny Capital purchasing 66% of Serato. Now, I think this deal is really dope, but there's obviously some context. So I took DJ lessons this year, so I learned how to DJ. And obviously, if you're a DJ, you know you're using Serato, right? But as I started to learn how to use Serato, I really started to figure out like how powerful this tool was from a music standpoint, right? Originally, what you used to have to do when you DJ'd was find songs, download them, put them on a USB, and put them in your device so that you can spin them, right? But what Serato started doing in the last year was actually allowing Apple Music and Apple Music integrations, right? So where you can actually go and instead of using that USB, you can actually pull that music, stream it through, and use it on your Serato. And I think that's what Tiny Capital saw in Serato in terms of music aficionados, audiophiles who would like to start playing around with music, not only in the US, not only in mature markets, but also around the world, democratizing that process. So I think that was a really smart move by Tiny to kind of take 66% of that company. But I think what I also loved about that deal was the structure. So they bought 66% of the company. They have a controlling stake in the company, but they are making no changes. They are allowing the executive team to stay. All of the employees are staying, and they're allowing them to continue their functions as they've been from the day before the acquisition happened. So I really love acquisitions that way, just because usually, when private equity or when a company comes in and buys in, the first thing they think about is all the structural changes that they want to make. So I thought that deal was really cool. My third deal and final deal is a deal that didn't happen this year, but got activated this year. So in 2021, Jamaica did what they call a catastrophe bond. And basically, in short, a catastrophe bond is a bond that pays out if there's a catastrophe, right? But they did one for hurricanes. And as most folks know, like the Caribbean gets hit with hurricanes every single year. And this year, Jamaica got hit with a massive hurricane. But because they structured this deal, this catastrophe bond, they didn't have to rely as much on insurance payments and on donations from other countries, which usually is what happens. As a Haitian person, that happens every time. When there's an earthquake, when there's a hurricane, we send in money to Haiti because there's no other way. There's usually like minimal other ways for them to receive that money. And a lot of people are losing trust in a lot of the nonprofit organizations that claim to bring that money in for relief, right? But so to have this particular bond pay out to Jamaica, pay out $150 million within a week's time of when the hurricane occurred, I think is really dope. And the way the deal was structured, they used a grid format. So basically they built a grid in and around Jamaica. And the deal was, hey, if the hurricane enters the grid at this particular wind speed, this particular category, the bond pays out. It's the first of its kind to actually structure its entire deal scientifically, right? And I think that's really brilliant, because the idea behind climate investing is that it's foo-foo, it's fake, it's XYZ, but to actually boil things down to a science and then actually have that be an investable device and a financial instrument that can be purchased on the open market is really brilliant.